Hello, listeners. Today, we're embarking on a journey through the often overlooked world of tree bark. This unassuming outer layer, often taken for granted, is a fascinating and complex part of a tree's anatomy. While bark serves primarily as a protective shield, it also plays a crucial role in a tree's overall health and survival. Its texture, color, and patterns can vary widely among different species, reflecting their unique adaptations to their environments. The anatomy of bark is composed of three distinct layers: the outer bark, the phloem, and the cambium. The outer bark, or periderm, is the most visible part of a tree's bark. It is made up of dead cells that have been corkified, giving it its tough protective properties. The outer bark can vary greatly in thickness, color, and texture, depending on the species and environmental factors. Beneath the outer bark lies the phloem, a living tissue that transports sugars produced by photosynthesis from the leaves to the rest of the tree. The phloem cells are arranged in long, tubular structures that allow for efficient transport. As a tree grows, new phloem cells are produced, pushing the older cells outward to become part of the outer bark. The innermost layer of bark is the cambium, a thin layer of meristematic cells that are responsible for the tree's growth. The cambium produces new phloem cells to the outside and new xylem cells to the inside. Xylem cells are responsible for transporting water and minerals from the roots to the rest of the tree. Types of bark can be classified into several different types based on its texture and appearance. 1. Smooth bark. Some trees, such as beech and birch, have smooth bark. This type of bark is typically thin and can be shiny or matte. Smooth bark can be a sign of a young tree, but it can also be a characteristic of certain mature species. 2. Scaly bark. Many trees develop scaly bark as they age. This type of bark is characterized by large overlapping scales. Examples of trees with scaly bark include pines, cedars, and redwoods. The scales can vary in size, shape, and color, depending on the species. 3. Furrowed bark. Furrowed bark is characterized by deep grooves or ridges. Oaks, maples, and elms are common examples of trees with furrowed bark. These grooves can help to protect the tree's inner layers from extreme temperatures and can also provide habitat for insects and other small creatures. 4. Flaky bark. Flaky bark is similar to scaly bark, but with smaller, more irregular flakes. Sycamores and eucalyptus are examples of trees with flaky bark. The flakes can be loose or tightly adhered to the tree's trunk. 5. Fibrous bark. Fibrous bark is characterized by long, stringy fibers. Some trees, such as mulberry and elm, have fibrous bark. This type of bark can be tough and difficult to remove. Bark patterns and colors. Beyond texture, bark can also exhibit interesting patterns and colors. Some trees have bark with distinctive markings or designs. For example, the bark of the paper birch is white and often peels off in thin sheets. The bark of the ponderosa pine has a reddish-brown color and is deeply grooved. Bark color can also vary depending on the age of the tree and environmental factors. Young trees often have smoother, lighter-colored bark, while older trees may have darker, more textured bark. Exposure to sunlight, wind, and other environmental factors can also affect bark color. Bark and survival bark plays a crucial role in a tree's survival. It protects the tree from pests, diseases, and environmental stresses, such as fire and drought. The thickness and composition of bark can vary among different species, reflecting their adaptations to their specific habitats. For example, trees that live in fire-prone areas often have thicker, more fire-resistant bark. This thicker bark can help to protect the tree's inner layers from the intense heat of a forest fire. Trees that live in dry climates may have thicker bark to help reduce water loss. Conclusion: as we've seen, the bark of a tree is more than just a protective covering. It is a complex and fascinating part of a tree's anatomy that plays a vital role in its survival. By understanding the different types of bark and their functions, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the diversity and resilience of the world's forests. So the next time you're out in nature, take a moment to examine the bark of the trees around you. You might be surprised by the variety of textures, colors, and patterns that you discover.